Fossil fuels, what are they and how can we replace them? In this video, I'll be talking about the harmful uses of fossil fuels, how we use them as a society, and different alternatives. So I will begin talking about fossil fuels and what they are. Fossil fuels are characterized as hydrocarbon, coal, and natural gas that were formed from dead plants and animals billions of years ago. Although, in some occasions, fossil fuels are not 100% dead animals or dead organisms. Fossil fuels can actually be made from mineralized materials. Although, contrary to what most people might think, fossil fuels are not actually dinosaurs. They were actually made from prehistoric times. And these were from dead plants or even dead organisms that lived far before dinosaurs existed. Now, the soil, when an organism dies, they are buried within the soil. Now, back then, soil was very unsteady, like it is now. So it was easily for the organism to be buried under it. Now, when an organism is buried, it goes through a process of decomposition. And during decomposition, dead organisms would begin to form organic material, which later became as fossil fuels, the fossil fuels that we know today. So fossil fuels depend on how long an organic material was buried. The debris of plants or animals, or provide a combination between both. One example of fossil fuels is natural gas and oil. These two forms of fossil fuels were created either from water organisms or organisms that were buried underneath deep bodies of water. When the water would evaporize, was able to give enough heat and pressure for that composition, for that organic material to be cooked, in a sense. Now, fossil fuels are commonly used as energy. We've all heard of fossil fuels, and we've all heard of the energy that it provides. While we go to the beach, sometimes we see these big towers are actually extracting fossil fuels from the ocean. So, the National Academy of Science states that the United States' total energy is actually 85% from fossil fuels. The energy is used mostly from coal and oil and natural gas. 33.2% of fossil fuels are derived from coal. Now, coal is mostly formed from carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. Now, when coal is burned, when it goes through combustion, it releases CO2, or carbon dioxide. Now, another fossil fuel commonly used is oil. The United States depends mostly on oil for transportation and to power large plants, or large industries, or power plants. When oil or petroleum is burned or goes through a process of combustion, it also releases massive amounts of carbon dioxide. Now, for those that don't know what really carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas that is produced naturally. It's produced in nature. However, due to massive usages of these fossil fuels, carbon dioxide is released in massive quantities. Now, greenhouse gases are mainly out in the atmosphere, and they protect us from the sun. They balance out the energy and they balance out the temperature. However, because there is a lot of carbon dioxide, a lot of methane, a lot of these greenhouse gases being formed, that they're able to trap the heat, causing global warming, or the so-called mythical global warming. Now, even though fossil fuels are a massive resource of energy, they contribute to the Earth's pollution. There are two methods that could help extract fossil fuels, which are mining and drilling. These two methods are also a contribution of pollution. Now, both of these methods, like I said before, pollute the environment. Now, another form of pollution is the burning of natural gas, like previously stated. Methane emission occurs from drilling wells and pipeline transportation. Methane is a very potent greenhouse gas that traps heat about in a timescale of 100 years. So basically, what this means is that when heat is being trapped into methane, it stays there for about 100 years, because it's all over the atmosphere, it causes a high increase in temperature. Now, oil drilling may also produce methane. Now, during this process, methane can be caught and used as energy. However, most of this methane is not being caught and is being released out into our atmosphere and into our environment. Now, the Union of Concerned Scientists, which is a group of scientists that come together, and they formed a website that said everything that was going on with our pollution, with our environment, with our earth, basically. They stated that in 2014, 78% of global warming emissions were energy-related emissions of CO2 and methane. CO2, again, being carbon dioxide. 42% was from oil, 32% from coal, and 27% was from natural gas. Each of these fossil fuels produces CO2 and methane, which increase the pollution in the environment, contributing to the global warming. Now, even though our current source of energy is provided from fossil fuels, we can still shift the other way. We can still use other methods and other alternatives that are not so damaging, just as fossil fuels. One of these methods is using hydrogen gas. Now, hydrogen gas is the first element of the periodic table. It is the element number 1 with 1 proton, 1 electron, and 1 neutron. It is the lightest, simple, and most common element in the entire universe. Hydrogen can also exist as a form of gas, which would be H2, the common H2. It is odorless and tasteless in room temperature. Engineers have developed a new technology that would replace petroleum with hydrogen gas. Hydrogen fuel could replace fossil fuels and generate cleaner energy due to the fact that the hydrogen burns clean. Now, when I'm saying that hydrogen burns clean, it's basically hydrogen gas being separated by a catalyst into protons and neutrons and electrons. The protons are separated passing through a PEM, which is the proton emitter membrane. During this process, electrical currents are being produced. Now, after these electrical currents are being produced, protons and electrons join with oxygen, forming heat and water that's released as an exhaust. Now, heat is mostly known as energy. One fuel cell can actually produce approximately 1 volt of energy. These fuel cells were actually used by NASA in the 1960s. These cells were the original forms of fuel that could power plants and even a simple cell phone. Fuel cells have a reverse reaction, just like most compounds do. The energy from the fuel cell breaks down the H2O molecules into protons and oxygen and electrons as well. And during this process, gas is being produced. And if it passes through a cathode, it produces hydrogen gas. So it goes back and forth. It's an equilibrium reaction. Hydrogen gas, just like gasoline, they need to be stored in a form. They need to be stored in order for it to be used. Which is actually H2 or hydrogen gas is less dense than the gasoline that we use today, by only needing approximately 1 to 300ths of energy at room temperature and pressure. Now, to be stored, hydrogen gas must become dense. So there is this process called compression, and this compresses hydrogen molecules into 10,000 psi at room temperature. This can power a vehicle that has a room temperature tank for approximately 300 miles. Refueling stations must also include these tanks to provide simple and faster fueling. So because of this, H2 gas, it does not produce CO2. It does not produce a common greenhouse gas. It produces itself. It goes back into equilibrium. It produces energy and it produces water, and that water in itself can also turn into hydrogen gas. So I am aware that now most vehicle companies produce these vehicles, but I still believe that we could still do more. Like, we can incorporate this basic method into our power plants, into our big industries, as well as our homes and our living, like in their everyday living. Thank you. And now, with this, I have concluded the video about fossil fuels and also how we can replace them by using hydrogen gas.